Hey everybody, I'm Amanda with DevExpress and welcome to 19.1 launch week and today's webinar, What's New in JavaScript, jQuery, Angular, React, and Vue, presented by DevExpress Web Program Manager Mehul and DevExpress Technical Evangelist Don Wibier. In this session, you'll see an in-depth review of the features we expect to ship for our JavaScript product line. This session is being recorded and it will be made available on our DevExpress YouTube channel later today, and we will send the link to the recording in a follow-up email. We will also do a live Q&A at the end of this presentation. Just type your questions in the GoToWebinar control panel at any time throughout the broadcast. All right, thank you so much for joining us. I will now hand things over to Mehul and Don.
Thank you, Amanda. Hey, Don, welcome.
Hey, Mehul. How are you doing?
I am excellent because as of yesterday, we are now officially shipping 19.1. So
I've seen it.
yeah, downloaded it, upgraded, and all that good stuff, right? And if you're not aware, then you can log into devexpress.com, go to My Downloads, and download the latest version. And yeah, I'm sure you've seen this What's New announcement. And so that's what Don and I will cover today. We are going to talk about everything related to JavaScript. This week, Amanda and company has been putting on all these excellent What's New webinars that I've been talking about. Of course, Don and I covered ASP.NET on Tuesday, and today we're going to focus in on JavaScript, which includes our jQuery, Angular, React, and Vue. So specifically, we're going to talk a lot about the core of the DevExtreme controls, which we have taken and wrapped and made available for Angular, React, and Vue. And of course, it still supports jQuery as it did right from the beginning. So let's just dive into it, Don, shall we?
Absolutely.
All right. So to begin with, let's first talk about a couple of new widgets that we have for DevExtreme in version 19.1. And the first one is a file manager component. And have you ever used a file manager component, Don?
Oh, yes, I did. And actually, I created one myself to only find out like a couple of months later, DevExpress released a file manager. That was for ASP.NET. But yeah, now this is really cool that we have it for DevExtreme as well.
Yeah, and what's fantastic is just like you, a lot of customers saw the ASP.NET version and said, when are you going to make a client-side version? And so I'm happy to say it's available and shipping today in 19.1. However, I say shipping, but it is shipping as a CTP. It's in preview mode in this current release. That said, it is truly functional, meaning, well, I shouldn't say truly. It's very functional because it has a lot of things like data binding to file system, to a hierarchical structure, supports thumbnails, as well as CRUD operations, which lets you upload files and change them. So we would like for you to test it, maybe not in production, maybe if you have a staging environment or something like that, or if you like, you could test in your production. I'm not going to be able to come stop you, of course, but we would mostly like your feedback to make this a really solid widget for when we have the final release. Now, it's very important, and I want to mention this, that it's something we don't always think about. We see a control like this, and I'm sure, I think, Don, you've done a webinar about web security practices and so forth, and you can take a look at that. But it's very important that you consider when you've got a control like this and you are enabling a possibility where somebody can upload items and so forth, that you are careful about what they upload. So for example, if you're going to open up your web server and allow it to save files and so forth, you are opening up a possible attack surface. So our CTO was very reticent, when Don and I were practicing this webinar. He said, please make sure you mention that because it is an important thing. And I fully agree. It is something to consider. Again, we are at the user interface level. Now, once the files are transferred up to the server, then you want to make sure that you take a look at the stream of information, possibly make sure that it is of the right file type and it's got nothing malicious in there, all that kind of good stuff. So again, that's fully up to you. But what I like is this control makes it really easy. It's got a really nice, tree structure here. It's got a details view. It's got the thumbnails view too. And it's functional in that I can click on items and folders and so forth and have the option to move, copy, rename, delete, or as we said, upload. Now, before we go further, Don, I want to make a mention here. So our team and our DevExtreme team has, of course, different groups that work on different widgets and so forth. But the team that works on these demos and docs, they work hard. And, they wanted me to particularly mention that in this release, there have been upgrades. I shouldn't say upgrade, updates to almost all of the demos. And that's fantastic. So as you can see, there's labels for when something is updated or if something is new and so forth. So just by going to js.devexpress.com and click on demos, you can experience these demos. And again, there's a lot available in this release. Now, speaking of new components, what else do we have in this release, Don?
Before we continue on that, I do want to ask you one question about this file manager control. If you check out the page that we're on right now, I see documentation about jQuery, ASP.NET Core, and ASP.NET MVC. But is this already available for the other client-side frameworks like Angular, Vue, and React? Or how does that work?
All right. Okay. So that's a great point. In the CTP right now, and thank you for bringing this up, because it's a CTP, we've had time for jQuery and our ASP.NET versions that use the DevExtreme wrapper or DevExtreme wrapped ASP.NET controls like the core controls and the MVC extensions. So in the CTP, it is not supporting Angular, React, and Vue. Now, most everything that we talk about today will be supported for those other platforms unless we make a specific mention like we did now for the file manager preview, the CTP, and it doesn't. So, but if it's something that's super important to you, let us know. And, you're going to hear me and Don and everybody in the company say a lot about feedback. We'd love to have your feedback. And of course, you can always write it to, go to our blogs and leave comments and so forth, open a support ticket. With DevExtreme has another option, and that is that DevExtreme is on GitHub. And so if you just Google DevExtreme GitHub, you'll find the link right probably at the top of the Google search results. And what's nice is that you can go and open an issue and you can see a lot of what we're going to show today is already, DevExtreme works on GitHub, right? And so this, for example, new file manager, if you wanted to find out more details about it, you can do that. So for example, if it's not, you may say, okay, well, let me just take a look and see if there's any open issues or closed issues, or let me create a new issue about, hey, I want you to bring the file manager over. So let us know. You can do it on GitHub. You can do it sending a support ticket, email us. We're very easily available. So it's not available for all of them just yet. So, let us know in the feedback. I would like to see it as a React. I would like to see it as Vue, because it helps us figure out what's important to you and how we prioritize our list of things to do. All right. So that said, Don, what else is happening for DevExtreme in terms of new components?
Well, you already mentioned that we value the feedback of your of all of you, and that introduces another new control, which is a diagram control. And we've gotten a lot of questions about a diagram control. Well, here it is. And again, it is a CTP, so it is a very first release. But nevertheless, it's pretty complete already. So we have, for instance, more than 35 built-in shapes. We have shape sizing, shape drag and drop, auto layout support, so it'll snap and align right with the other objects, external data binding, and so on and so on. And also, it's a really, really cool diagram control. It's got everything almost in there. But as said, it is a very first release, so it's a CTP, and for that it's only available yet with jQuery just as the file manager. But once we have like the core control working, we'll deliver the integration layers with Vue, Angular, and React as well, obviously. But for now, yeah, we want to finish off the control itself. So you can see it works very nice. And yeah, again, check it out and let us know what you think about it.
So again, as Don just mentioned, in this CTP version, we do not have a version for certain platforms. And so, for example, we don't have it. And, there'll be a blog post coming pretty soon that goes into a little more detail. But in essence, we are working on it, as is usually the case. The CTP, we really, as Don just said, this was highly requested. This was something our customers have been asking for. And it's, generally we just want to make sure we prioritize in the right way. And so when we saw a good opportunity and a good way to bring this to you, then we designed it. As you can see, it's completely client-side. It's really nice, as Don was mentioning, with the drag and drop and all that. But again, it's not available for certain platforms like Angular, React, and Vue. So stay tuned. We've got support for it. But again, the key here is we really want your feedback. So, if you've got some interesting things, then, for sure, just, again, you can just come up here on GitHub, either search for diagram or open in a new issue as well. So a lot of issues we've been closing lately as well because, now that the release has been done, you can see it. But again, there's all sorts of things on that GitHub page. You can check out fork things if you want, send us requests. We'd love customer feedback. In fact, I'm going to talk a little bit about a case later about some customer giving us some info on that. All right, Don. So now let's talk about the venerable data grid.
I thought that there weren't any more features possible in the grid, but the guys just don't stop from the DevExtreme team. They continue with all kinds of nice features. So yeah, tell us about it.
Right. So this is probably the most popular widget component for DevExtreme, and by design. I mean, everyone needs a data grid. A data grid is very important, and we continue to improve on it based on customer feedback because it's really feature rich, as you implied, Don, meaning it's got grouping, filtering, sorting, lots of great features, exporting and master detail, you name it. Well, in this release, what we've got is some enhancements based on customer feedback. So customers came to us and said, look, our end users really love this thing. They use the heck out of it. But there are certain scenarios in which when they are doing high-speed data entry, we would like you to improve this. And so we have added 3 features to the editing of the grid. And so we've added a edit on key press. And now these are all customizable, as you'll see. So when I've got edit on key press enabled and I'm on a particular cell, as soon as I start typing, like, Don loves file manager, I can instantly start typing that. Now also, I've got an enter key action. So when I hit enter now, you can see that now I've moved focus. Now I can still control it and say, look, I don't want it to be on edit. I don't want to start edit on key press. Instead, I want to do it when I hit the enter key. Well, I can do that. So if I start typing here, nothing happens. And now, as I hit enter, I've entered edit mode. Now, what's nice is it's configurable, of course, but we've added another option. You can choose the direction. So right now, you can see I'm moving by cell, moving via in the column. So I'm moving down in the column. But let's say I want to edit the row. So now instead of typing, Greta's or something like that, I can hit enter or tab, and as you can see, it just moves over to the next one. So what's nice is this almost enables Excel-like functionality. If it's not Excel, of course, we've got the spreadsheet control for that. But as you can see, in the world of developers that we live in, we cannot escape those excellent Office controls. But what's nice is this functionality is available. Now, based on this, we've also added a couple of double-click events. So on cell double-click and on row double-click events that you can take advantage of, as well as a couple of new data editing API actions as well. So now you have editing, select text on edit start, and that tells you when the cell text is auto-selected by the user, so you can act on that. And we also got an editing.start edit action. Now, Don, what else is happening with the grid and tree list?
Yeah, that's again something that we already spent quite a bunch of work on the other ASP.NET controls, and that is something which is getting more important these days, accessibility. And well, we obviously gained quite some knowledge about accessibility and screen readers, how they work with the efforts that we did on the ASP.NET controls. So we have also decided to improve the accessibility enhancements on the DevExtreme data grid as well. So that means that if you have a screen reader, etc., that you can better work with the data grid. For instance, one of the things that we improved is that you can actually now navigate to and interact with the data grid elements, such as the headers, the page, the controls, and the command columns via keyboard. That was in 80.2 not possible, but now you can actually see that you can move your arrow keys on the keyboard and move onto those elements of the data grid as well. So that is obviously a great improvement for people who need accessibility features.
That's right, and that's an excellent point, Don. That I was surprised back. We've been supporting accessibility in a lot of our platforms, and so I'm happy to see this feature for the grid and tree list as well. And what's nice is that nearly a third of the population requires accessibility. So whether they do it through screen readers like JAWS or so forth, and so having this is really handy now. And as you can see, you can use tab, control up and down, enter, or space. And that was, as Don was talking, that was me just tabbing around, as you can see. But you can also do control up and down and so forth, or enter or space can also work as well. All right, Don, let's talk a little bit about the tree list. In the tree list, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. In the tree list, we have added a new filter mode.
That's right.
That was actually one of the features that has been requested as well. So what was happening that if you use the search or the filter functionality in the tree list in the 80.2 version, you could not actually specify whether to search like the full branch or just like the main levels. And so what you see here is that it will do it will search for the IT manager or for manager. That's what you entered. And if you put the filter mode on the with ancestors, it will also it will not show the children underneath the found nodes. And so if we do the full branch, then you can still collapse those found nodes basically. And that was for certain scenarios a requested feature from some of our customers, so we decided to just put that in.
Yeah, exactly. So again, this came from customer feedback, and you didn't have the full branch option before, and you have it now. Excellent. All right, let's talk about finally a data grid enhancement, and that is we have a new way to export to Excel. Now, you might say, well, this was already supported, so what's new? What's different? Well, let's talk about that. So we, as I said, have support export to Excel, but some customers requested some more features. Now, well, we said we can enhance our export, but there are a lot of great libraries out there available that do this. So we took a look at Excel.js. Now, whenever we look at some external library, we have some requirements, right? For example, how good is the library, right? Because there's a lot of, let's face it, projects that are no longer supported on GitHub. So we wanted to make sure it's something that's active. So as you can see, based on the issues, pull requests, branches, and commits, this is a very popular library. And so we decided that, well, it does more than what we do. So let's see if we can incorporate this in here. So I'm happy to say that in this release, we have Export to Excel API integration with the Excel.js library. However, it is in preview mode because, we are working out some enhancements to it. But the features with this integration with Excel.js include ability to add a custom header or footer, export multiple grids into a single worksheet, or export multiple grids into a single document using separate worksheets. You can rename the exported file, generate worksheets with custom content, and display a loading indicator when you've got a large data set. So that is really cool. Now, the best part of it is, even though it's in a preview and you say, well, there's certain things from your library that we prefer, well, good news. They are compatible, meaning that you can use the features in conjunction with our existing Export to Excel API, and it will not break your existing apps. They can be tested independently, in fact. So here it is. Here's the excellent Excel.js library integration. You can see it looks snazzy. I've got colors. I've got all sorts of nice things, and again, you can do some really handy things with this integration. All right, Don, shall we talk a little bit about UI widgets?
Yeah, sounds good. And I'm going to kick off with one, I think it was one of your favorite buttons, isn't it?
You know it.
Yeah, I do have to say it's my second favorite button because the coffee machine has my favorite button. But that aside, we're going to talk about the new floating button widget. And as you can see on the screen, this is actually inspired from the material design guidelines, and we obviously have studied the material design very good. And you see this button every now and then on other apps and websites as well. So the button is just floating on the bottom on the right side, and it is a bit of a context sensitive button. So in this case, you can add a row to a data grid. But if you have selected a row, for instance, you will see that you can actually do some other things. So it is context sensitive in this way. And yeah, you can obviously customize it any way that you want. We even have some documentation, like if you want to combine it, if you want to have the functionality as shown in this demo, how to set that up. It's quite easy to have this button like communicate with a data grid or any of the other controls. So you can also now use this floating button widget in your existing projects and use the material design features.
Exactly. And I'm a big fan of it because look, it's floating. It's got the word action in it, and it's a button. So, but yeah, I really love this idea. And this demo shows, right? So it is a separate widget, right? Meaning that you can integrate it with existing DevStream widgets because it's not integrated out of the box, but you can. And we have demos that show how to do it, for example, here with the data grid, but also with the scheduler. And, in the future, we'll consider maybe out of the box integration. But for now, as you can see here, it's fairly easy. So we got all sorts of, code for all the different platforms we support on how to do this integration. Now, I don't mention this enough, so let me mention on a lot of our demos, you will see this copy to code pen. Because, let's face it, we love to see source code, but we also want to play with it. We want to get our hands on it. I mean, that's, I think, one of the best ways to learn. And so that's why we enable this copy to code pen. So you can click on it, and it will take you to a third-party site, CodePen.io, which will have this exact demo here. Now, of course, you can play with this demo right on our website by, changing around some item here, like instead of calling it grid, call it something else and change the name or change the size and hit apply, and it'll update this demo. But if you like, you can also pull it out into this website, CodePen.io, which will reference all the necessary libraries for DevExtreme and so forth, and then you can start playing around with it and then save your own version. I don't know if it lets you download. I believe it probably does if you have a login and all that. But again, copy to CodePen. Please definitely try it out. And the team that makes these demos, they would also like, if any of these demos are not useful, give it a thumbs down. If they are useful, give it a thumbs up. Or better yet, just, open an issue on GitHub and say, hey, like, I'd love to see this from this demo or so forth. So feedback like that is very, very helpful. Okay, Don, speaking of new buttons, we have another new button, and that is the drop-down button widget. Now, this drop-down button widget looks very similar to another widget that we have, or another component, and that is the select box here. Let's bring up the select box in a separate tab. And you can see that the select box also gives you a similar functionality. So what's the difference? Well, first of all, the key difference is visually they're very different, right? So as you can see here, the select box is very much has a function, and that it is an editor, meaning that you would put it in a form and so forth. You can select items and so forth. And because it's an editor, you can edit the value that it's data bound to. Now, a drop-down button is under the under the actions and lists category, because you can take action on it. So for example, when I selected Visual Studio Trial here, you can see that I took an action and said, you know what, show a little pop-up whenever I select the item. So there's different scenarios in how you would use it. For example, in a toolbar, I want to select and change the font, but I don't necessarily want to save that back to my database. And again, that is a perfect scenario for the drop-down button versus, let's say, the select box, which is a completely. So select box we've had around. It's excellent. Been around a long time. But this actually came, again, from some customer scenarios, but also it was something that we decided that it was a useful widget to have. And it's available now for all of these excellent platforms. All right, Don, what else is happening with our UI widgets?
Well, one of the editors that we introduced in the previous release is our HTML Markdown Editor. And while it is still in CTP, we did include a couple of nice and new features here. So the first one is something that basically every self-respecting editor should have, and that is obviously the selection of media blocks and a resizing of those. Yeah, so if you have like an image, you might want to, hey, who's that? Yeah, you might want to make it a bit smaller right now. Nah. Well, anyway, so this is one of the new features that came into the HTML/Markdown editor.
I feel like you're staring at me, Don.
Yeah, I do.
I'm sorry.
Fortunately, we have a delete function as well, so.
All right, fine.
I would check that one out. But anyway, yeah, so that's something that was missing, but it's in there right now. And one of the other new features is something that you see quite a lot on like social media sites and some other applications as well, which is the support for mentions. For all of you not entirely sure what that means is, well, if you have like this text and you enter the @ sign, it will trigger a pop-up, and for instance, if you go to Facebook, you'll get like a list with your friends that you can select. But with this editor, you can actually determine as a developer what should be in the mentions list depending on what you type. And so now you can actually have those mentions as well and refer to other people or whatever is in the list and whatever your requirements are. So again, a very nice feature on the HTML/Markdown editor.
Excellent. Yeah, like you said, mentions is everywhere on that GitHub editor and so forth. And again, this is a really awesome HTML editor, and it has support for output format, so it can output to Markdown or, of course, still work with HTML. So it's a really excellent editor that you can play around with. It is a CTP, so it is in preview, of course. But as you can see, it's got some it's got some great features built into it that you can start using. And for a long time, we resisted creating such an editor because there are a lot out there already. But our customers said, no, we want you to make it because we love the way your themes look and how they integrate. So again, this was based on customer feedback, and you've asked and we've created. So now we'd love to have your feedback. Use this HTML editor. Let us know what other features we need to add to it. If you see anything wrong with it, let us know. We'll get right on it to fix it and all that good stuff. Okay, Don, let's talk about another editor, and this is the text editor. So we've got a very slick custom text editor buttons that we are now enabling. And so with this, what you can do, you can add built-in actions. So for example, here, let's say I've got the text box. I can add a little icon that shows or hides the passwords. Or if you've got, let's say, something a little slicker, I've got a multi-currency number box here, right? And that's basically just using the DX number box widget. And in it, what I've added is I've got a array for a collection for buttons, right? And so in it, you might be able to say, well, how many buttons can I add? You can add as many as you want, but what's nice is you can define, for example, the text for it. So here I've got your international symbol for, I guess that's euros, Don, or something.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, you and your fancy European currency. All right, Don. So
yeah.
Let's say if I wanted to convert this. So what's nice is you can see I've got an on-click function here that is going to do that for me. So it's going to take the dollar value and convert it to euros, and then of course update this to $sign so I can switch back and forth easily. So again, I can still get the base functionality of the number box where I can change the values and so forth and easily see what's this worth in euros, right? So hey Don, does that mean we're actually winning this now that it's higher?
Yeah, it depends on how you see it, but I do have to say that this multi-currency number box I just love this demo. It is just so cool. I mean,
awesome.
Yeah,
it is
great.
really cool. And what's nice is you can go further and take, for example, like our date box, and you say, look, great, I want to change it on the dates, but I really wish there was an easy way that when I clicked on the date editor, that it would just get me the current date, right? Give me today. So take me back today. It will always take you back to the current one. And again, you can put multiple buttons if you want, right? So you can go ahead, come in here and say, look, let's add another button in here or something like that. We can do that as well so that you can do multiple items. And you can add as many as you want. But again, be careful because you got to have the real estate to make sure that it's going to work and look good. Okay, Don, what's happening with our pivot grid?
Well, the pivot grid is also an ongoing process of performance tuning, making this grid faster, and that is obviously because the pivot grid loves to play with a lot of data. The more data it has, the better it works. But that also comes with a performance thing. So what we have done in this release is that our pivot grid can now request paged data sets from the endpoint where it's getting the data from. Your endpoint needs to support, obviously, paged data sets, but whenever the pivot grid is trying to expand a certain node, it can request only the data needed to expand that node from the server, and that obviously has a performance improvement on large data sets of aggregated data. So it is the only visual thing that you will have here is better performance. But yeah, it's a great feature in this new release.
Excellent. So by upgrading to 19.1, they can get this enhanced features for remote data paging.
Yes, but as I mentioned, you have to make sure that your backend that will serve the data is also able to provide paged data sets.
Yes.
So that is that's to keep in mind. But one of the other things that you will get when you upgrade to 90.1 is our new cascade filtering feature.
Nice. Okay, so let's show that off here.
Yeah, that's another one which is really nice, because now those filter boxes can actually depend on each other basically. And so in this case, you select the bike, and the subcategory will only show items that are have the parent category bikes. And so if you now you only see the bikes, but if you select another category, you'll have other subcategories, and this works automatically out of the box. And for all of you who have tried building this kind of functionality themselves, you know it's quite a bit of work to get that going. And so yeah, this is a very nice visual addition to the pivot grid, because this works out of the box now.
Excellent. All right, let's now show off a feature of the scheduler that I think is going to be very interesting and useful for a lot of customers, and that is we have added adaptability to the scheduler. Now, DevExtreme, as you know, long ago was a hybrid mobile library, but again, nowadays we don't focus on that, but instead we focus more on desktop, powerful desktop components, which is what customers want, but they still want some great features, responsive and adaptive features. So I'm happy to show you that, like with many of our other DevExtreme widgets, we have adaptability built into the scheduler. So what happens when you are adaptive? Well, the scheduler adapts to small screens, of course, right? So when you don't have enough real estate, the scheduler will start saying, okay, I'm going to go into this mode here, or for example, I can show. So for example, there's different views, week and month and so forth, but let's focus here on the month. In fact, let me bring up the browser tools here, F12, and let's scroll down. And so here I've got I'm in the responsive, but here's what this dot represents is touch interface. So now you'll see that not only do the appointments, well, first of all, I should mention my favorite button here. You've got an action button here. So when I click this, I can, of course, get a screen. And again, the screen on desktop may be modal, but here it's going to take up the full screen because, again, we're on mobile, so it makes sense. And then it's all touch friendly, but also I've got these indicators here. So what these indicators tell you is that, oh, you've got appointments. And so with it, you can have a nice way to even delete some appointments. So now it updates instantly. Or again, you can scroll as well if there's more than 3 or 4. So it's a really slick interface and allows you to just get this out of the box pretty much. So let's go back to the regular view here. And as you can see that the floating action button along with the appointment list that pops up at the edge of the screen really makes a great a great experience for your mobile users. So you can start taking advantage of that with the 19.1 upgrade. All right, Don, what else is happening with data visualization?
Yeah, that's also in Control where we have added quite a bunch of nice features. And yeah, the first one that I'd like to talk about is that we have done some enhancements on the legends. So for instance, what we've done is you can actually change the order, text and visibility of particular legend items through a legend.customizeItems callback. And as you can see, there are images in the annotations now in the labels. So that's a very, very nice thing. And one of the other things that we have done is we have resolved a couple of things concerning label overlaps.
Yes. Okay. So let's show this. We've got a special demo for this, I believe. Hang on one second, Don. Bring this up.
Yeah. So in certain scenarios, it might occur. For instance, yeah. Can you show the picture? Yeah, put it.
Yeah,
to
sure.
hide.
I can do that as well. I think the picture's a good one to show as well, and then we can show the demo. So data visualization.
Yeah, so what you see on the left side is actually yeah, what you see on the left side here in the funnel chart is how it was done in the previous versions as well. So in this case, because the bottom two values are too close to each other, then you'll have the labels overlap each other. But when you now put the resolve label overlapping option to shift, you will see that actually the labels are shifted so they don't overlap anymore. And so this is how it was, and this is what is possible now with 19.1. So it's a small but very useful feature. And we can also do another mode, and that's hide. In this case, when you put it to hide, the overlapping ones will disappear. In this case, it might not be as convenient, but for instance, if you have like a bar gauge or a donut chart or something, on the left picture you see those labels overlapping, and on the right side, when you put resolve labels to hide, you don't see the second one anymore, but you can make an assumption that it will be pretty close to the other one. So in this case, you can actually use the hide label feature.
Yeah, makes
so
sense. I'm sorry, go ahead.
A couple of nice things to make your charts look more pretty.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you were saying that, I mean, if the values are so close, you can probably just get away with saying, well, I mean, it's pretty close. Probably it's 49 or something like that. So yeah, it makes sense to sometimes just hide it. But again, we have the shift option as well if you need to display all of the values.
Yeah, you've got a couple of options here. So very nice. One of the other things that we have done is we have a support for tooltips when hovering, and then you can also enable sticky hovering, which is very convenient on a line chart, for instance, and you want to hover over that one.
Sure, let's show that. That's an interesting one where sticky hovering, huh? So let's see.
So in this case,
nice.
Stick for just a while, so you still have you can actually read what's on the tooltip. So if you disable the sticky hovering here, it's gone as soon as you move your mouse. So the sticky one just gives a nice touch to actually read what's on there. And another thing which I find very interesting is that we now have different color segments in charts. Do you have that demo at hand as well?
Is this the legend enhancements?
No, it's the let me see what one this. No, this is another enhancements on the legends. Yeah, let's talk about that one. So in this case, what you see on the bottom of the chart is two sets of legends. One is the world population percentages and the other one is the city population. Well, why do I know that? Because we now support a title on top of those legends. So you can now put titles on top of those legends to make your charts more readable to whoever wants to see it. All right, so I think that's about all the new features on the charts. So small but useful little features. You have already talked about, this is another one with the legends, which are now spaced out quite nicely, I think. Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. So so the let's just cover real quick. So you talked about chart annotations, legend enhancements, resolving label overlaps, and chart engage enhancements. So a lot of excellent things. What do you call it? Hovering over the item was really cool as well. But let's move on, Don, and talk about something else, and that is our themes. And you know what? Let's just use the scheduler for this. So last year, you remember, we introduced the material design themes. Now, these are based on the Google Material Design Guidelines. So we studied those guidelines, and they're very popular, of course, with the Google products. In fact, I think let's use the data grid for this. I think the data grid looks good with material design as well. So what's nice is with the material design, you've got the, sort of nice rounded looking features, but it looks, again, very much like you might see something like on some of those Android devices, because again, it's a Google invention, right? Meaning that Google uses it across all of their products, not just mobile, but across their web things too. So Gmail and Google Calendar and all those, they also use Material Design. And it's a very nice design, so we decided to support it, and we introduced this last year, and we introduced it in several flavors, including blue, lime, orange, purple, and teal, with light and dark versions of both of them. And they look fantastic. However, we realized that they are great on mobile because they have a large padding on a lot of those items. So for example, this row has extra paddings and spacing and all that good stuff. And we said, you know what, that's great for tablets and mobile, but what about for desktop? Well, so in this release, we are introducing compact versions of all of these same themes. And so the compact versions, as you would imagine, are the exact same theme with just less padding and spacing. So as you can see now, this works a lot better for mouse-based desktop environments because you can fit more items. It doesn't have to be as large. And again, since your users are not going to be touching it with their finger or something, then you can just say, well, the mouse is enough. It's got enough space because this is exactly what I need it to do. So again, you may prefer the compact versions when you are using them. And again, they got all the same themes as the regular Material Design themes, but just compact. And what's nice is these are fully supported by our theme builder. So our excellent theme builder, you can say, listen, I don't exactly like I like the blue, but I don't like the font. Or you can modify each of these themes and of course use them with all the DevExtreme libraries. Okay. Let's switch gears, Don, and talk a little bit about React. Now, we should mention it again at the top. Most everything except for some of the CTP items that we mentioned earlier are fully available for the DevExtreme widgets platforms that it supports. Now, if you go to the main homepage here, you can see we support Angular. So all of the 65 plus widgets that we talked about today are fully supported by Angular, as well as React and Vue and ASP.NET MVC and ASP.NET Core, and of course Knockout. But a couple of years ago, we looked at supporting the React framework. Now you might say, well, you said you support React now, and we do. But for React, like we do for MVC, we have a couple of options for React. And the reason is there's a backstory to that. So let me tell you the backstory, Don. Let's pull up a chair and tell you the story. All right. So what happened was initially we asked you, the developers, our community, and we said, how should we support React? And you said, and we had a voting, and people said, I would love to see native controls for React. And so we did that, but when we first came out with it, we said, okay, we spent a couple of cycles and took us almost a year, but we now have a native React grid. And this is a fantastic grid. Based on your feedback, you love it. You said, you did it the right way. This is great, but it took so long. What's going on? I need a scheduler. I need charts. I need editors, and et cetera, et cetera. So what we said was that this is a very costly endeavor. Meaning that if we were to set and take it, it would take us a long time. Because look at DevExtreme. DevExtreme, it is where it's at today with all of these excellent 60, 65 plus components, because it's been around since 2011. So each year it grows, and each year we add new items to it. So in order for us to do that, to keep writing native, it would take a long time. And based on your feedback and usage scenarios, we decided that, hey, listen, it is also possible to deliver all of these widgets as wrappers. And you might say, well, wait a minute, well, why wrappers? What's the difference between native and wrappers? Well, if you Google DevExtreme React native versus wrappers, we wrote a very nice long blog post that details exactly the what and the why, right? And for example, what is it like to have native components versus React, and what's available and why, and all that kind of stuff. And so I'll just I won't go through this blog post, but I will tell you that, both of them support Redux. Both of them are, in fact, with the wrappers, we believe it's actually a little bit easier to configure it. But again, if you are a React developer, you're going to say, no, I love the configuration with the plugin composition because, as you know, in React, everything's a plugin. And so, I think this is the main difference in terms of how it looks. For example, this looks more like standard DevExpress code, but again, that's not how React looks on it. Now, that said, performance is very comparable, but the key difference is what's available to you. And so if you prefer, you can use them together, right? So that's also an option. So if you want for native React, not React Native, that's a different thing. That's for mobile and stuff. For our native React components, we offer a grid, we offer charts, and a scheduler says planned, but it's available now. But again, you can find these on our pages. Again, we have GitHub pages that take you to what we call the DevExpress Reactive Library that has access to all of these information for the grid, the demos, the chart, and the scheduler. And so the chart is in beta and the scheduler is in CTP, but they have docs and so forth. Now, that said, what I want to focus in on, that's not particular to 19.1. This is the story even before 19.1. In 19.1, what we are introducing is a set of, let's go back here to the demos, a set of, let's say, for example, the data grid here. Not a set. We are introducing a responsive application template. Now, this is a template to make it easier for you to use our reactive components. And so what's nice is we, again, followed those nice guidelines. So React has a great starting point. It's called the Create React app, right? And Facebook supports it and all that good stuff. And so using our React components, the DevExpress React components, now these are the wrapped ones. And so using those, you can see that we have a really nice template, and it has the data grid in here, as well as some other widgets that you can take a look at in form and so forth. But what's nice is you can add new views. You can get started with this. So right from the CLI, you can put a command line item and it'll generate this, and then start playing around with it, or start adding new views, change themes, customize themes, all of the good stuff. And it fully supports the theming, where you can have a light side and a dark side and all that good stuff. But what's nice is that this is responsive. So let's say I bring up the F12 tools here, and as I start to resize, you can see that it starts hiding certain items. So the drawer widget is responsible for this and says, oh, okay, you got barely any space here. You've got a really thin phone here. No problem. I'll show only the hamburger menu. I've got another item here as well for the logins, but I'm going to show only your content unless you have some more screen real estate. And as you can see, as we get more screen real estate, we can start showing these items. We can also hide and show them ourselves. So this is very much like a template we introduced for Angular last year. And it's again, we have the same template available for Angular, but now it's available for React, as well as, might as well mention it, Don. Well, you know what? Actually, we'll get to Vue in a minute. Don, let me talk now a little bit about CLI. Do you use any command line interfaces?
Oh yeah, CLIs, at least if they're good, they can save you a lot of work. And I do love the DevExpress CLI. So yeah, that's a very nice tool which speeds up your development.
Absolutely, and you're exactly right. It not only speeds up your development, but if you are a command line ninja, then you'll see that you can do all sorts of great things by things like creating a React package with the layout, without it, or with icons, and so forth. There's a lot of options. In fact, our team was telling me, like, Mehul, this thing can do everything. And I said, everything? Like, can it make me some eggs? And they said, yes, it can do everything for you. So I'm excited to try this update in 19.1 to the CLI tools. that now supports React apps and view generation. So before the CLI already supported items with our theming, with of course Angular and so forth, but CLI functionality keeps growing with support now for the React apps that I just showed you here, that you can generate this right from the CLI as well. Now, that said, Don, what else is happening with our native React grid?
Yeah, that's also a very nice feature that we already had, obviously, in the DevExpress data grid. And that is that we now support virtual scrolling with remote data. And again, obviously, your endpoint that will fetch the data from the database needs to support it as well. But at least the grid can now actually signal your endpoint, like I need page 10 and it's going to be 20 records, something like that. And that obviously makes your grid more responsive as it already is. So a very nice feature with large data sets.
And what I really like out of this UI wise. Well, first of all, this React grid is crazy fast. But what's nice is, as you can see, because it's remote and I'm loading the data from that API that I just showed you here, what's nice is as I'm scrolling and it's loading that, it's showing you sort of these markers for that, hey, some information is coming there, right? So it kind of fools you, tricks, kind of like a loading indicator that you see on web pages. And so it's an excellent feature. And
yeah, that looks really cool.
Yeah, I really love it. I love it as well. All right, so speaking of native React, let me show you now for our native React scheduler. We have added support for drag and drop. So as I was talking, we have all of those excellent DevExpress React ones available as well. And you can see those demos right on our main site. And these, what we call what is the word that we use for it? The reactive components are the native components for React. And so as you can see, we are now supporting in the scheduler drag and drop. Now you may see some items have this little red on them. That means they're not changeable, meaning they're not editable. And that's by design. So we wanted to show you that function is available because some of these you can move the appointment dates, you can extend or shorten the appointment times and so forth right from the mouse. So you can use that do that using the mouse. So that's now supported with the native React scheduler. And what's happening with the native React chart, Don?
Yeah, one of the things that was not available yet is the support for scrolling and zooming. So what you see in the demo right now is actually being done with the mouse on a desktop computer. But you can actually now use zooming and scrolling by using your mouse like this. And obviously when you have a touch-enabled device, it will also be supported with touch gestures to do the scrolling and the zooming and the panning, etc. So that was something that was missing from the charts. We've added that now to the React charts as well.
Excellent. Yeah, I really like so for example here, actually, you know what? I can show this using the F12 tools because that mimics the touch here. So as you can see, if you had that, yeah, or if I'm using scrolling with the mouse here, really nice panning and zooming available. Awesome. All right, Don, let's now move on and talk about our view components. And I'll quickly just say, because we're running a little bit out of time here, is that the view components also have a responsive application template. And it's going to look very similar to the one I just showed earlier. So all the things that I said with the grid is there, but this is specific with our view CLI. And so, I'm sorry, it was built with the view CLI, and the DevExpress CLI also supports it as well. So for example, we've got commands with the DevExpress CLI that can generate this app as well as customize the themes. And well, with the CLI, you can do a lot of things. But with this project template, yes, you can add new views, customize themes, switch themes, elements, add in other view components. So again, because these are available as on the DevExpress site, you can just go to demos, and if you're figuring out like, how do I add the new HTML editor to view? Well, we have code for it all right here. You can see this, you can hit copy to sandbox, and that'll pop it out and make it available as well. So definitely take a look. And again, let's stop here and see if we've got any questions we can answer quickly. I know the team is really good at answering it. So Amanda, Don, thanks. Amanda, any questions we can answer, or has the team already addressed all of them?
Hey, Mehul. The team looks like they've gotten to all of the questions.
Wow.
Awesome.
So then let's show that final slide, Don, and tell people where they can find us.
Yep. Well, yeah, you can actually reach us at our email address or our Twitter handle, or you can go to our Facebook page. And yeah, if you have any questions about the new release, drop us a line and we'll get back to you.
Excellent.
Awesome. Thanks, Mehul. Thanks, Don. All right, everybody. Like I mentioned before, today's webinar will be made available later on our DevExpress YouTube channel. While you're on our YouTube channel, please subscribe and also ring that little bell so that you're notified whenever we release new content. You will also get a follow-up email with a link to this webinar recording, probably sometime next week. We do have one more webinar today. It is for CodeRush, and it is at noon Pacific Standard Time, and you can register for that at devexpress.com/webinars. And that is it for this one. Thank you so much to Mehul and Don. Thank you all for joining us. And of course, thank you for choosing DevExpress. Bye-bye.